Hey, what's up, y'all? Welcome back to whatever episode of Health and Wellness with Cluster. Today you have Johnson and Ash as your hosts, and on screen you'll see that we are making mental health meatballs. So follow along and listen as we give you some tidbits into mental health.
All right, we're going to start off with the question of how do you stay mentally healthy and how do you define good mental health? I define good mental health as being predictable. There's going to be ebbs and flows, there's going to be ups and downs, but making sure that I'm within a range where I can still function. Even if I have an off day, I can still get right back on my productivity, and I can still really enjoy hanging out with friends and doing things that should be enjoyable.
Yeah, I think you bring up some really good points. I think what you said about mental health and how it ebbs and flows is really important because as university students and students in residence, we are under a lot of pressure from our own life through academic and personal pursuits. And so it's pretty inevitable that there will sometimes be bad days, but at the same time, there'll also be good days. So I think good mental health in that regard just means that you're honest with yourself and you understand that like the good days and the bad days are going to happen, and like those will require different challenges.
Exactly. And I think that's a really key part of staying mentally healthy is understanding that you need to be flexible with yourself, because as a university student, your schedule is so different every week and you just need to be able to take those breaks sometimes. And so for me personally, I take breaks to spend time with friends. I really like going for drives or walks and talking to people. So if I have a problem or even if I just want to feel good, I like going for a walk and talking with someone, just kind of verbally dumping everything, because especially as a university student, I have to listen so much that I really enjoy being able to talk out things that aren't academic and talk about things that are personal to me.
Yeah, totally. I think there's a lot of a notion about how we are supposed to bottle our own feelings and keep them private or within our innermost circle, but I think there's a lot of benefits that can come about just like letting your feelings out or letting your feelings be heard by whoever is there and like willing to listen to you, because that's honestly the toughest thing for me as my own person, is that I have a proclivity to be in my own person and be in my own shell when realistically I know that like the people around me are there to support me, and if I can get those feelings off my chest, then I'll feel a lot better about that. So let me pivot in a different direction, Ash. I wanted to ask you a question, and it's, if you are somebody that hasn't really been in tune with their mental well-being, or just someone that like has never really like gotten to get a read on their own mental health, like how do you begin to like understand your own mental health and where you're at in that regard? Like and if you do decide that like maybe you're not in the greatest mental space, how do you make the decisions to like start to improve that aspect of your life?
I really like that question. For me personally, I learned a little after my first year that I needed to focus on my mental health. And so my first step was actually asking for professional help and seeking out someone. And so I find that the first step is actually asking for professional help, because then you're already started on the right path. And that professional help could be from asking your parents to help you find someone, looking up different resources, going to the wellness center and talking to a psychologist or a doctor. Even if you don't have mental health that you feel you have to worry about, it's the easiest way and the most productive way I find to actually get support for moving towards a positive mental health setting and to kind of set yourself up for success in terms of providing yourself with enough support and positive coping mechanisms or ways to deal with your problems, even if they're not that big of a deal in your own eyes. It gives you a better environment to start with.
Yeah, I think you bring up some really good points. I really resonate with the idea that like it's important to take seconds or moments to check in with yourself, because a lot of people, like myself included, especially when I was in my first year, never really considered my mental health as much as I should have or needed to. I think I was too preoccupied with my physical health and where I wanted to be in that department, and in doing so, I put all my eggs in that basket, and I've really considered the mental aspect of my life, which now I realize is a very big and very important part to who I am. And so I just wanted to take a moment and just kind of like tell all our viewers that there are services, as Ashley mentioned, on campus that are available to you as an individual and you as a student, and those are counseling services, health services, and even multi-faith services. And that goes for all types of religion or no religion at all. I think the multi-faith services is a very underrated resource because a lot of people just associate it with religion, but it's so much more than that, and it's an opportunity to take space for yourself. And I think that's one of the things that we've really tried to encourage people to do in this conversation, because in our hectic day-to-day life, we don't really get a chance to really check in with ourselves as much as we should. Ash, did you have any other comments?
I just really appreciate that you talk about personal check-ins, because any moment is a moment to look at your mental health, where you're at, and if you need to do something about it. For instance, just taking a step back and looking at if you're feeling emotions, if you're noticing that your behavior is changing drastically, or if you notice that your behavior isn't positive for your own mental well-being or your own satisfaction in your daily life. Like if you find that you're abusing substances, that's a step away. Take a step back, look at it and how you're doing daily activities and how you feel on a day-to-day basis. And that's the underlying connection between you and your mental health. And I just really enjoy that you talk about personal check-ins and how we don't really have enough of that.
Yeah, totally. I think that's a super important aspect. And it's like also very private, and it's a very personal moment that you can spend with yourself and ask yourself when you have the space to like, am I going through a good day? And if not, like, what's been going on? And then you can start to realize that like, oh, I just had a really stressful school week, maybe I need to take some time for myself. Or I've had a lot of personal things come up today, maybe I need to confide in someone. So there's a lot of different aspects to go with that. But Ash, do you have another question that you wanted to bring up and we can put to the people?
I always ask how you support yourself and others through mental health problems, because oftentimes our first people to reach out for mental health are our friends or our family. So I wanted to ask, how do you support yourself and others through mental health problems?
Yeah, totally. I think as people, we obviously want to help those around us, and we want to be a point of support for them. And I think that's very important. I also understand as a friend, you're only able to do so much in your capacity unless you're like obviously a trained professional. So if my friend came up to me and were like, hey, I'm having a really bad day, or like I'm having a really hard mental health day, I would feel like it was my responsibility to listen to them and show empathy and show support and just be there for them for whatever they need. But at the end of the day, like if it's a really serious problem, like to outsource to professionals, as we've kind of reiterated in this conversation. But at the same time, there are things that you can do in your capacity as a friend, and whether that means to go for a walk, like Ashley has mentioned a few times, or like what I like to do is like get a bite to eat and just like have some ice cream, or literally anything that like get those serotonin boosters going. I think that like I can use whatever resource that I have at my disposal to help out my friend that's not so intense to say this is what you should do, or like this is how I can help you, because sometimes your friend understands that like you might not have all the answers, and that's perfectly okay because you're not supposed to. But what you can do is be supportive, be affirmative, and go get some ice cream and just have a good time. What would you say, Ash?
I would also reiterate that it's really important to listen, as a lot of the time when you're under a lot of stress, or when your friend is under a lot of stress, most of the time talking it out and just having someone to listen can be so helpful, especially because sometimes advice isn't actually helpful. Sometimes people aren't looking for an answer. They're just looking for someone to be empathetic and listen to what's going on and understand why they're frustrated or why they feel a certain way. And I also find that like physical activity really helps, or just getting outside, going downtown, going to the beach, getting out of your current environment, I find really helpful in feeling better, feeling more motivated.
Yeah, totally. Awesome. Well, folks, that's all the time that we have today. I hope that you enjoyed our conversation. I also hope that you enjoyed the video that we are putting up on the screen right now, and decide to make yourself some mental health meatballs, because you know what? You deserve it. It's been a tough year for everyone. I think I can say that. So, yeah, without further ado, Ash, do you have any last words for our viewers?
Just remind yourself of what you're grateful for on a daily basis to stay positive. And thank you so much for listening. We really appreciate it.
Well, that's all from us, folks. Have a good one.